Welcome to Disunion, the Government Union Report, the podcast where we delve into the ever-evolving landscape of public sector labor policy and law.
Sarah Harbison is my guest today. Sarah Harbison joined the Pelican Institute as general counsel in 2020. There she files strategic lawsuits challenging federal overreach in laws that burden economic and individual liberties. There's a number of interesting cases that she's litigated. You can find out more about her on the Pelican Institute's website, pelicaninstitute.org. Sarah, thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited.
Yeah, Sarah's one of my regular listeners, and I sometimes get a text from her or an email saying that she appreciated the episode. There's not many of you, Sarah, so
I am a reviewer.
Well, I asked Sarah to join us today because I had been touching base periodically with her throughout the legislative season in Louisiana. And there's quite a story to tell about what happened in Louisiana with a recent labor reform bill. So, Sarah, I guess before you get into the drama of this, I'd appreciate you running through what the bill did and what the goals were in Louisiana.
Absolutely. It was a simple opt-in bill. Last year, Louisiana had a regular legislative session, meaning it was not budget focused. So legislators were able to bring as many bills as they liked. And for some reason, I thought this was a great idea to bring like 6 union reform bills. I think it ended up being about 9. Several of them made it through most of the process. A lot of them got stalled in Senate labor. Fast forward a year, there's been a special election. Some members of Senate labor have been replaced. It's a friendlier, more favorable group. And we hear that this is opt-in, or government union reform generally, is going to be a priority of the governors. So this bill, very simply, you opt in every year. Every year, as you are deciding what benefits you want from your employer, like your insurance, your dental, vision, any of those things, as beginning of the year enrollment decisions that you're making, you would make the same about whether or not you want to continue your union membership or join a union if you haven't been a member at all. And it would also allow people to resign at any time. We have a few collective bargaining agreements parish-wide in Louisiana where the drop windows that we've seen have been quite restrictive. Some of them are, you have to resign by September 1. Some of them are the first 10 days of school, which is never the same day every year. So if your circumstances change, you no longer wish to be a member for any reason at all, or you're disgusted by some of the political speech that your union makes, you can resign, withdraw your membership at any time, and stop paying dues.
And so, Sarah, this was applicable to public employees in Louisiana?
That's right, public employees. So that would include teachers, transportation workers in New Orleans. The city hall workers recently decided to unionize. And at the governor's request, it did exclude police and fire. But of the collective bargaining agreements we've seen for police and fire, their prerogative is drop at any time.
And then are state employees unionized in Louisiana? I forget.
I think they can be. I don't know that I haven't heard much of an active state employees union.
Yeah, got it. Okay, so at will, these employees, if they're union members, can resign from the union at any time. And then every year, is it every year, the opt-in period?
The opt-in period would be every year.
These employees would be required, if they wish to remain union members, to inform who would they inform to make sure that they remain union members?
That's all handled through their employer. So you would let your employer know, yes, I want to be a member, or no, I no longer wish to be a member.
Got it. So that's interesting. I want to come back to that towards the end, because I'm curious about, state action in particular, and what happens if a union gets in the way of allowing people to opt out had the bill been passed. But before we get there, so the bill's popular, it's supported by the governor. What happens next?
Bill's popular, supported by the governor. We go through the full House. Actually, let me back up a second. We go to House Labor. At House Labor, there's a concern raised about the cost that might be associated with informing everyone of their Janus rights. You get a 14-point slip font email that just says you have a right to join or not join a union, and you can resign at any time. And there was some concern about the cost or administrative burden placed on it was mostly discussed in the context of a school. So one of the committee members said, well, why don't we ask the union to pay for it? So that was added as an amendment to the bill. It passed. It made it through the committee, made it through the full House. We get over to the Senate side. It passes through the Senate. There were some attempts to add police and fire back into the bill. Those were all rejected. And then we get to closing the waning days of session. We're getting a little bit nervous because we've been told we have the votes. It's going to be fine. As you get closer and closer to sine die, you have to, all the bills that are passed approaching that deadline have to pass with a 2/3 majority. So I know that we've got a simple majority. Don't know if we've got 2/3. We're really unsure. We haven't really been given a date for the bill to be heard in the full Senate, or for one of the senators to present it before the full Senate. One day, LSU is playing for a berth to the national championship, and it's raining, and we're just watching our phones, watching the Senate. There's going to be a rain delay, and it's subject to call at any time, and it gets called. And I guess they're just, they can't go to the stadium to watch the game, so they just might as well handle some business. So the bill gets called. It's amended. An amendment is offered that takes out the opt-in. It leaves in a lot of the really great stuff, like the ability to resign at any time, but it guts that opt-in part where you are resigned every year and have to opt back in. And that amendment, it was offered by a Republican. Several Republicans supported the amendment, and the bill passed as amended. It goes to be concurred, and it goes over to the House. The bill author rejects the amendment, so it goes to concurrence, which is where it was put to its death.
And that's not a public proceeding. I remember watching online the House floor debate and the Senate floor debate. I'm just sort of a dork like that. I was very interested, and I saw a lot of legislators who weren't real sure about what the bill did and said. Many of the Democrats were simply using union talking points to say
Absolutely.
things like, "This is an attack on teachers. This is just another way to defund our educational system." Of course, the bill had nothing to do with that.
No.
This opt-in measure, if it did have an impact as far as teachers not wishing to join the union, that's something that I think could be easily remedied. Somebody could probably join the union again at any time, even past whatever the window would have been to do that formally. But if anything, it would have defunded the unions, right? Not the educational system.
Absolutely not. Two entirely separate things. We had a lot of discussion about Gator, funding our ESA program this term, and those are completely separate.
That's a school choice measure.
School choice. That's right. Our
Okay,
school choice program is called Gator to Scholarship Program.
Okay, so were any of those? Was there a confusion around the bill? I mean, what happened once it got to conference?
If you ever find out, if anyone ever tells you, call me. We simply don't know. Those are not public sessions, so we just know that the bill it takes 2 out of 3 members to vote the bill out of conference. Both the Senate and the House conferring committees have to agree, and they didn't. That's what we know.
Now, the only difference between the bill, what was the difference between the two bills?
One of them just gutted the opt-in part.
That's the only difference.
That's really it. Yeah.
Okay.
And the bill author didn't want it. Hopefully he's a purist and wants to bring it back next year, because we're certainly game to try.
Yeah. Okay. Well, tell me about that. I mean, has he said anything publicly about it?
He hasn't said anything publicly. No, we've texted back and forth, of course, but we're disappointed. We were very disappointed. There were a lot of people we expected better from, who we expected to be on board with this, who really let us down.
And I have to ask, I mean, the governor was initially behind this, but I saw a number of conflicting statements, as this bill worked its way through the legislature. Any idea where the governor sits on the bill now?
As far as bringing it back next year?
Yeah.
I don't know. Next year it's a new ball game. It's another regular session. So lawmakers are allowed to bring as many bills as they like once again. So certainly there would be room to try. And I think he was caught off guard as much as we were, as to when this is going to come up in the Senate. It was subject to call at any time after it made it through the committee. And I think they were caught off guard as we were.
Yeah, interesting. Okay. So I'm curious about the extent it leaves one to wonder whether the unions had some sort of engagement behind the scenes on this. I mean, what's the level of, are unions a powerful force in the Louisiana legislature, and to what extent might they have been involved here?
They are, I would say that they do have influence. They got to the right people. They got to a Republican who offered this amendment, and they got to enough Republicans. There was a lot of, from what I understand, pressure from AFL-CIO to get involved, and I understand that they offered some amendments early on that the governor's office wasn't interested in entertaining. They were sort of silly. They wanted to change the font from like 14 to 10 or something silly like that. And maybe make it not annual, maybe biannual, or every 5 years or so. In Louisiana, one of one of the factors was we had an election in March of 2023. Back in November of 2024, there was a special legislative session on the budget. And in that session, the intention was to rewrite Article 7 of the Louisiana Constitution. Article 7 is a mess. It has been amended so many times. It's now the length of the original 1973 Constitution. And rather than putting sort of, general guardrails on how the legislature can make a budget, it really just handcuffs them. So most of our general fund is already dedicated. One of my favorite legislators likes to say, we are just a few amendments from autopilot. There are almost no decisions for us to make when we get here. So one of the reforms that was proposed in this delicate balance of how do we give teachers raises, how do we balance the budget, how do we create a responsible budget, how do we take the handcuffs off the legislature, was to liquidate a couple of trust funds, pay down some interest, and then allow schools that had would realize savings from paying down the debt on the retirement to take that money. I'm probably explaining this very poorly, but they could use that money for raises. And this was a way that the governor's staff and the legislatures had found to fund a permanent raise for teachers, because up until that point, they had been getting raises through stipends. All of those things were passed to be put on the ballot in November of 2024. March 2025, there's an election. There are 4 amendments on the ballot. Constitutional Amendment 2 is one of them. And that one, there was just a big messaging mess. Some people who should have been in support of this amendment caught on to and started messaging that it would end tax exemption for religious properties. The teachers union, Louisiana Federation of Teachers, at the state level supported this because they thought that this is how we get a raise. Some of the locals opposed it because the amendment had a government growth limit. That was one of the reasons they opposed it. So they thought maybe in the future they might not be able to divert funds from someplace else or give themselves raises whenever there's a drop in the price of oil, for example, or a worldwide pandemic. And one of the unions in particular, one of the locals, one of the Louisiana Federation of Teacher affiliates, put out a statement condemning Constitutional Amendment 2. And one of the reasons why they said that their teachers should oppose it is because certain groups, Pelican Institute, are for it, therefore bad. So
Oh, man.
yeah, we have this. This is sort of the context that we're in. We have local versus state butting heads over Constitutional Amendment 2 heading into the legislative session.
Mm-hmm. Got it. All right. Well, let's go back to sort of the nuts and bolts of this particular bill.
Okay.
Because opt-in, that language may not be totally familiar to people. The way I would typically talk about opt-in, it would be a requirement that union members have to basically restate their desire to remain union members for another year. That's pretty innovative and something that, to my knowledge, there's only one other state that's enacted something like that. What would be the purpose behind that, Sarah? And, what was Pelican Institute's interest in having that kind of reform done in Louisiana?
The purpose behind it is so that people can take control of their paychecks. You've got something deducted from your check every month. I mean, there are apps that advertise on podcasts, maybe like this one, where you can say, do you know that you're spending $15 a month or however much a month on this subscription? So we tend to treat things like gym memberships, subscription. If you don't set a reminder, you don't know that you have it. So it's an opportunity to say, okay, here is what, do I want my insurance to continue for this year? Do I need to add a dependent? Do I need to take away, one of my kids is aged out of the program, I can take him off of my insurance. So you just make these decisions year after year. Why not add whether or not you want to spend the maybe $200+ per year on whether or not you want to continue your union membership? And it's something you just kind of don't think about it. And if you follow some of the traffic on their Facebook pages, they'll say things like, wow, I didn't know that the union was doing this. I'd rather not fund this. Why is this important in Louisiana? We see a lot of political activity from the unions. And New Orleans, in particular, is pretty nefarious. Shortly after October 7, 2023, the Louisiana Federation of Teachers put out a statement calling the Hamas terrorist attack an armed resistance.
Mm-hmm.
I don't pay dues to a union. I lost my mind when I read that, and if I were paying for that, I would want to stop that immediately. But you see example after example of unions using their members' dues to get involved in the political process. They've attacked members of the legislature personally on their pages when they do something with which they disagree. They take positions on ballot measures like Constitutional Amendment 2 and 1, 3, and 4 on the March ballot. They align themselves in particular with Democratic Socialists of America, Students for Jewish Voices for Peace, which is not a real thing. And they align themselves with some of the worst of the worst. And in Louisiana, this is a state that elected on the first ballot in a crowded field a Republican governor, elected Donald Trump twice by a margin of about 60-40 both times. So even if you don't separate teachers, we don't have a poll of teachers. Are you political? Are you conservative? Are you liberal? I think it's fair to say that maybe they lean left, but they're hardly extreme. And these are some extreme positions and some extreme alignments that they've taken.
Well, this also makes sense given that, let's say, a teacher, another public employee did find out that the union was funding some of these things and had moral qualms with it. Louisiana, when one of these hearings was going on, some of the unions said, well, people can leave the union at any time. That's plainly not true. So it's not true in many other states, but I tried to fill out the NEA's form in Louisiana to become an NEA member. And, I put in some real information about me, but ended up getting to the point where I was supposed to agree and check a couple of boxes. And one of the boxes said that something like, I agree to pay union membership dues regardless of my membership status. So while it may be true that they could revoke their membership at any time, they still have to fund the activity that they want to fund. Yet, at the same time, all the privileges of being a member in the union, access to whatever benefits the union might provide, are gone. They can't access those benefits while they pay union dues. Very strange situation, very common, but very strange.
And
So
I did it
is
the other
part
day.
of
It
it,
hasn't changed.
say that again?
They haven't changed their form. I also, made up a profile to join and just to see if they've updated it. They haven't.
Well, that's not a surprise to me. I would believe that many of the people who testified, heads of the union or union representatives, probably don't know what the form says either. This language is coming; it's national push. This language is ultimately coming from a couple of law firms that represent unions like the NEA, AFT, AFSCME, and SCIU. And when people agree to this, it basically turns it into sort of a contract where they waive their First Amendment rights without really knowing it. And that's a problem. That's a First Amendment problem. So curious to see, I mean, is this worthy of a lawsuit in Louisiana? Are there people who've been bound by not only this, but maybe a collective bargaining agreement that may restrict their rights?
Yeah, there are, I think, 5 parishes that have collective bargaining agreements. I'm just looking over at one that I got the other day on my desk. I had to send down a public records request for this. I had to write a physical check, and I had to wait for them to mail me this beautiful bound copy of the St. Bernard Association of Educators. This one has a 10-day drop window. 10 days starting the first day of school, which, like we discussed, changes every year. Other collective bargaining agreements in the parishes, a few of them have allowed you to resign at any time, mostly because the Pelican Institute has been complaining about some of their speech and the restrictions that they place on their members. Others are 10 days by September 1. They're still pretty restrictive. Otherwise, if you aren't a member in a collective bargaining parish, or in Orleans Parish, our unions are organized campus by campus. So those are all a little bit, those contracts are a little bit different. But if
this is in the collective bargaining agreement. So I
Yes.
don't, that seems worse to me
Yes.
than asking somebody to sign something that waives their rights. Now that's, depending on the context, there may be a problem with that too. But when it's in a collective bargaining agreement, it means that the employer and the union agreed to it without any actual voluntary consent from an individual member.
Absolutely.
And that, that's an extension of I guess the union's representative rights in that context, but they're also unfortunately waiving those First Amendment rights for individual employees that you would think they wouldn't be allowed to do. So I don't know, any employees in those districts that have tried to resign that would be interested in filing some kind of lawsuit, probably be pretty successful with that.
Absolutely. And we're here at the Pelican Institute Center for Justice would be absolutely thrilled to help you resign or help you with that lawsuit. If anyone's interested and wants to leave their union and is unsuccessful in doing that, we can help you out.
I mean, in that sense, this is not political at all. This is a First Amendment issue. So you've litigated a number of First Amendment cases. Can you tell me about some of the other work that you've done on this and how those cases have gone so far?
Sure. I think our biggest one is Boudreaux versus Louisiana State Bar Association.
That's perfect. Perfect name. Yeah, I love it.
Right. Randy Boudreaux is a longtime friend and a fan of the Pelican Institute. And after the Janus decision came down, he and James Baer, who is the founder of the Center for Justice, they were talking and they said, this reasoning is applicable to a bar association. Our bar association does all this weird stuff. Randy is pretty involved. He's an advocate for his community, and he is regularly at the legislature, and he's not necessarily testifying about legal things, but he'll see, oh, the bar association has a lobbyist. That's weird. Why are they here today? And when you check to see the bills that the bar association took positions on, you'll see very few of them have anything to do with regulating lawyers as lawyers or improving the legal profession or the judiciary. Some of them have to do with like oyster leases. I think my favorite Randy is he's a landlord, and he says, look, I rent out one side of my house. I can rent out to whoever I want. I don't have a problem with most people. But the Bar Association took a position on a housing discrimination bill, which has really nothing to do with the practice of law. And Randy said it was to prohibit discrimination against LGBTQ people, which is wrong. But Randy said, look, I don't want to tell some little old lady that she is required to rent to a polyamorous throuple. And that is in a deposition transcript. It's one of the highlights of my career. So all of these examples of things that the Bar Association was using our bar dues to do that have nothing to do with the practice of law. We filed the lawsuit. A lot of legislators, they, like I said, sometimes we pay dues to, this is another example, we pay dues to things, we don't realize how our money is being used. There were legislators who were surprised when the Bar Association's lobbyist stood up or put out a red card to testify against a tort reform bill. Again, it kind of has to do with the practice of law, but it's going to be a 50-50 issue because half of the defense bar, but we have a very powerful plaintiff's bar in Louisiana. So people were taken by surprise. As a result of our lawsuit, the Bar Association fired its lobbyist. It reformed its legislative affairs committee. Now there's a process to take a position on any sort of legislation. It has to be germane to the practice of law, and it has to regulate lawyers as lawyers. It has to have something to do with access to justice or a better or more educated or more capable judiciary, I think.
I didn't know the end of that story, Sarah, but that, if you could copy and paste that kind of an ending onto a union-related issue, that would be a big success. So regardless of whether opt-in passes, regardless of whether people's First Amendment rights are respected, and of course those are laudable goals that I think would be fantastic in any state. But it would be fantastic also to see unions be a little more responsive to membership. That
Absolutely.
There are these political positions that they take, just like in any other state. And it seems like employees who are represented by the union should be, at the very least, consulted before they take those positions. This is kind of a strange world in which there are such extreme positions that are, it's really hard for any organization to represent a general membership the way that a teachers union does. But man, if they could simply ask members, I think that it would go a lot better for them in the end.
Absolutely.
So I guess last question, you're looking towards next session. You're hoping that opt-in might be part of the legislative package that's introduced. What are the barriers that you see to that happening again next year and ultimately to passage of this thing?
What barriers? That's hard to predict in Louisiana. What's going to be the next disaster? I mean, knock on wood, there is a storm brewing in the Gulf right now. Hopefully it just dissipates and nothing happens. It's impossible to predict what the conditions might be in the next year, what the budget's going to look like, what the price of oil is going to do. Is Iran going to go nuts or something? I mean, that all affects the price of oil, the price of gas, which affects Louisiana's economy. That determines what attention gets paid. So all of that said, I think that we can do a really great job. We can let our legislators know about your podcast. We can let everybody know these are the things that are being done in people's names. There are a lot of protests happening around the country right now. United Teachers of New Orleans, they're all over it. They're very involved in it. The more we see people's districts being affected and people using that money to speak on behalf of their membership, the more compelling of a case that they make for allowing people to resign their membership and stop paying dues at any time.
Gotcha. Well, Sarah, where can people learn more about this and find more of your work?
We are pelicanpolicy.org. You can find. I
said it wrong at the beginning.
Pelicanpolicy.org. It all goes there. It all goes there. I'm on X, Roy Harbison, RoyHarbison, and you can see pictures of my cats on Instagram, Sarah E. Harbison.
All right, Sarah, thanks for joining us.
Of course. Thank you so much.